Hey there, it's Anthony the IT psychiatrist here, and here in New Zealand it's been Cybersecurity Awareness Week from October 19th to the 23rd. A few of the posts that I put on LinkedIn, I've used the term CISO, or Chief Information Security Officer. Now I know that's a term that many aren't familiar with, so I thought rather than try and explain it, I'd go straight to the source and talk to a couple of CISOs in my network. In today's video, I interview Hilary Walton, CISO for Kordia, and Alastair Miller, CISO for NSP, to find out what a CISO is, why they're important to your organization, and how they're different from just a usual IT manager or chief information officer.
What is the role of the CISO? It's an interesting one, isn't it?
Oh.
I personally think, I'm not going to give the standard answer to this, Ents. I'm going to go slightly off piece because I think it's an evolving role. Definitely an evolving role. So I think, obviously there's the usual stuff around running the security program and the governance and the risk management and that stuff. But I think the role of the CISO is evolving, and because it used to be enough just to kind of give the security messages to line managers who would give them direct reports and they'd follow up and make sure that they were followed. But I think now the CISO role is evolving into this role, and actually the security team as well, that they need to now inspire people. They need to now influence the business and really kind of, get people developing that security mindset. So, security, the aim is to have security done as a matter of course, that it just becomes part of the fabric of an organization, that everyone's kind of thinking about security risks and security improvements and things like that. So it's becoming much more of a communicator and a motivator, and then trying to get other people to do it as well, because it's not enough to just come from the CISO, these sort of messages. What we want is this osmosis thing sort of happening in organizations where there might be a security message. It might come from the CISO, but then in the bathroom, Joe is talking to, John about it. Hey, did you hear this thing? And then so the security messages are kind of getting out there in that way. So I think it's more and more that we're needing to get everyone on the security team and, really get everyone proactively identifying risks, controlling each other's behavior in relation to security and security attitudes and mindsets. And so it's communicators, motivators, influencers, and kind of that need to inspire the organization as well.
I see the role of a CISO as the man or woman who talks to the board about risk. So while there is the chief risk officer, I see the CISO as the person who talks about risk, particularly in the cybersecurity framework. But as we go forward, I see the role morphing into bringing into privacy. So they're the people who take those risks, take them to the board and help them understand how that impacts the whole business. So they'll take the technical, the more tricky information about those risks and break it down into simple business-based risks that the board can understand and then action. Because without the board being on board, to mix board words, nothing will happen in the organisation. So conversations about risk, conversations about security that happen at the management level tend not to then percolate throughout the organisation and things get stuck. But once the board can understand how these risks matter to the whole organisation and to them in particular, then the problems can be solved from that level. So it's the CISO's job to help the board understand those risks around privacy and security. CIO, CTO, well, CIO wants to keep the business running. So they're all worried about performance. They want users up, the database up. They want things running smoothly, the business making money. CTO, depending on the type of company, will try and either introduce new technology to the business or help the business develop new technology to use. Now, the CISO, they're not really trying to help the business run in that real sense. They want to keep uptime, but it's not their jobs to have sort of make life smooth and easy for everyone inside the business. They want to do that while introducing security to the business. So having MFA doesn't help a business run, but it protects it against having its accounts compromised. The business could happily run without it, but it then has a risk based around that, the risk of account compromise. So the CISO is there to throw in things that can cause problems inside the business if they're not well done and not everyone doesn't buy into them. But they then improve the security and posture and reduce risk. So that's where the big clashes become, particularly between CIOs and CISOs, where the CIO wants everything to run smoothly, great uptime, happy users, and the CISO is going, well, we have to throw in some security measures that will cause users a little bit of friction, a little bit of learning to do. So that is an interesting clash of personalities, and the worst possible outcome is that CISOs report to CIOs. That is a really bad outcome, because then the CIO always wins. His view gets reported to the board and the CEO, and the CISO just becomes a beating post for problems.
Okay, so the role of a CIO and CTO, they are much more broader roles, and the security role is much more focused through that lens of security. So the CISO role has that ultimate accountability for delivering those good security outcomes on behalf of the organization. A CIO, for me, that's more of an operational kind of taking the IT requirements of the organization and, building systems that keep the organization going. A CTO, that's much more in the future looking space. So they're looking at new technologies that the organization might benefit from, and to kind of give it that real competitive edge. And so sometimes those roles are kind of blurred in perhaps a CDO, Chief Digital Officer role. But the CISO, they are taking the ever-increasing security risks that a company is facing and trying to, as the company's trying to move along, making sure that it's keeping its data safe and its, information, and making sure things are done in a secure way. So it's really kind of working at that business risk level and trying to keep up with the organization and make sure it's doing the right things. I think if you want to really give something the focus it deserves, then if you put like a person in charge of it who is going to love it, maintain it, drive it, be focused on it, then naturally you're going to get better outcomes with someone doing that. And so that is, what a CISO or someone focused on security is doing. But, it may not be practical for every organization, depending on their size. There are economic realities that go on in organizations, and they have to think about where they're putting their money. And so that's in smaller organizations, that's where you see people wearing multiple hats around security and IT and things like that. So my short answer is yes. If you can put someone in charge of security who's going to love it and take care of it and maintain it, then of course you're going to get better outcomes.
Yeah, everyone should have a CISO, whether it's an actual person who's 24/7 or a virtual CISO. Everyone needs that role, because it's a role that takes a lot of experience, takes a lot of time to come to understand all the various risks and how you deal with the board, management, and users. So it's quite a unique role that you can't just shoehorn people in. It's quite common for CIOs to introduce themselves as CIO/CISO, and IT managers to go IT manager/CISO. But those roles are quite distinct, and the experience and the mindsets are different. So an organization big enough should have a CISO. If you're heading towards 100 users or 100 people inside the company, you should definitely have a CISO. If you're 50, you should be looking at either having one if you're particularly IT centric, or having a virtual CISO, and then anything smaller than that, getting the services of a virtual CISO, someone who comes in for a few days every month to help you. That's the key there. Without that, those conversations are just not happening, and no one's helping you with those issues.
So the skills of a CISO, more and more, I think, the skills need to be based around communication. So it's communication, it's storytelling, and then there's also the problem solving and that kind of conceptual piece, that strategic, piece where they're able to join the dots on different things. But it's also around collaboration and facilitation as well as I find a lot of my role is quite creative, or I have to be quite curious around what different businesses or units are doing, and to get kind of across what is happening. And then I'm going to pull in some really human kind of skills here as well. Like, they need to be able to listen. I think listening is super important skill for any CISO, as well as being empathetic to the business or to people and what they're trying to do. And I'm going to put kindness on the table as well.
The key will be experience. It's one of those jobs where you have to slowly build up, so you can't really be parachuted in at a young age or suddenly migrate from being a CIO to being a CISO. So you've got to have started in that understanding risk and consultancy around risk. So there'll be lots of sort of ex-auditors, possibly a lot of consultants, obviously, because that's where most of CISOs have come from. Then there's people who have slowly built up the experience, done a variety of sort of ISC squared and ISECA qualifications that help you round out your skills, and then have done the job for a while in sort of the consultancy, possibly an IT security manager, and then slowly worked up to being a CISO. So they should be reporting directly to the board if at all possible. If not a board, if the board doesn't exist, the directors or CEO, they shouldn't be stashed under a CIO or a CTO or anyone else like that. The minute they have to report to another technically minded manager, then they lose the ability to put forward the security and risk issues straight to the board in a way that doesn't then have them battle or has them independently battle against some of the CEO's user and uptime issues. So this is an issue, particularly in New Zealand, where not many CISOs report directly to a board or a CEO. They're stuck behind a CIO or someone similar. I've even seen them stuck behind IT managers, which is just baffling. But so it's got to be a role that talks directly to a board / CEO, where they can make the clear and distinct arguments for why solutions that may be either expensive or slightly painful as they get put in are important, and then the CIO can put have a different argument about why we shouldn't do this or we should do something slightly different, but from an equal peer footing. The minute the CIO can dilute the message, then security loses out and the business ends up losing out.
The old reporting line debate for CISOs. Should they report into CFO, CIO, to the chief executive? It's there's definitely some best practice around this. So best practice says it should report to the CEO to give it that kind of importance and visibility. It's a business risk that's been managed. It's not an IT risk. So that's the whole thing about having it reporting to the CE. But it kind of depends on the organization and the people involved and the culture, and the people being the really important bit as well, because there's no reporting structure that good leadership can't overcome. Like, that's just, if people are willing to work together in the right way, it doesn't necessarily matter where they report. And I guess the converse of that is there's no reporting structure that poor leadership is actually going to fix as well. So yeah, depends on the organization. Best practice is because of the importance is from a business risk perspective into the CEO, but it depends on the people and the culture and the leadership of people as well.
So there you go. That's the role of a CISO. Pretty important in your organization, particularly as we hit the digital revolution and encourage more businesses to get online. If you've got something you want to find out more about, why not drop me a note below or send me an email, anthony@theitpsychiatrist.co.nz, and I'll see how I can explain it in ways that make sense. This is Anthony from The IT Psychiatrist. Have a great day.